Well, the weekend has come to an end, but we do not end things here. Now, for those who know this already, as you all know, I did not do any reviews for the Saturday episode because A, I had something that was pressing and personal, and it kind of took away the time to do so. So I apologize. However, I decided to make it up for all of you. So today's episode, we're going to be, of course, reviewing TNA's recent pay-per-view, Emergence. Now, as you know, we have plenty title matches. Leon Slater makes his first title defense against Cedric Alexander. And then, of course, we have the grudge match between Matt Cardona and Mustafa Ali. The TNA World Tag Team titles are on the line, including, of course, the TNA World Championship. Will Moose finally fulfill TNA's promise to return the title back to TNA from NXT's Trick Williams? That's something we will see and review about. And then, of course, AAA had their much recent event, Triplemania XXXIII at Mexico City. Not only featuring talent from AAA, but also we got talent from WWE also making their appearance as well. As you know, there's going to be a four-way match for the AAA Mega Championship. Hijo de Vikingo will defend his championship against Dominic Mysterio, Dragon Lee, and of course, El Grande Americano. So we'll see how that will grow up. So we're going to go through every match on Triplemania. And then finally, as you know, we have AEW Collision. As you know, we are now close to Forbidden Door. We're maybe making our way to London. So this will be, of course, the final week before we head to, of course, well, the final weekend before we head to London. So this is going to be very interesting. So we'll see how things will progress. And then, of course, as always, we'll cap up our episode as usual with some news updates to give you guys updates on what's been happening in the world of wrestling, such as what events and promotions are throwing out, who's booked, what matches are set, including developments that are happening in the world of wrestling as we speak. So, let's get ready for another episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Hey everyone, welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone, all things that is pro wrestling with AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, TNA, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, wrestlers, matches, and championships. I am your host, J-Rod here. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. This is a channel we do a lot of pro wrestling reviews from various promotions, not only here in the United States, but also in Japan, Mexico, Canada, Europe, the UK. Anywhere in the world pro wrestling is not as big, but it continues to grow. We also, of course, do discussion videos, talk about various topics such as the wrestlers themselves, the promotions, factions, storylines, whatever we want to talk about. We also, of course, do more news updates. If certain information was unable to be on this episode, we can either put it on the next one or on a separate video by itself. We also, of course, do real-time news updates to keep you guys on alert if something has happened in the world of wrestling that needs to be addressed ASAP. We also, of course, got the Unagi Sayaka Watch and various other cool wrestling content as well. So if you like what you see, please subscribe to us and click on that subscribe button. You'll be getting a lot of daily reviews and other cool wrestling content as well. But if you like this episode, please give us a like on the like button or a nice comment in the description down below. Now, enough of the jibber jabbers. Let's get down to business. So let's begin with our first review, TNA Emergence. Okay, TNA Emergence. This is one of their much recent pay-per-view, not their bigger ones, in case anybody has. I think the next one after this will be Bound for Glory, but that's going to be at another time. But this one, I have to say, it's going to be a very interesting one. Now, let's start with some of the matches part of the countdown to Emergence. The first one, we have Rosemary versus Indy Hartwell. Now, if you guys remember what happened this past Thursday, Indy Hartwell won her match, and then she got, of course, the green mist by Rosemary. Rosemary felt threatened by the existence of Indy Hartwell, acting like she runs the place. Now, of course, you would know Indy Hartwell will try to get, of course, a measure of revenge. But however, of course, you know Rosemary was going to do the same thing again, giving her the green mist. But thank God that Danny Luna showed up in order to stop her from doing that. But that gave, of course, Indy Hartwell to do the one thing that was necessary to take her out by using the hurt donut, and just like that, 1, 2, 3 is over. Now in the interview, she kind of felt like, Danny Luna didn't need to interfere, but of course she needed to do something, because she knows firsthand what's it like to be dealing with Rosemary. But that's how it is. Now our next match and final part of the countdown, we have Ryan Menneth versus the Hometown Man. As you probably know, Ryan Menneth is probably going through a temper tantrum, knowing that Nick is now suspended by putting his hands on Santino Marella. But he has to deal with the Hometown Man. Of course, Ryan Menneth would do whatever it takes to win to prove his point. But it didn't do any well, because apparently Hometown Man rolled him up. 1, 2, 3. It was over. Now, let's jump in, of course, with the TNA X Division Championship, which is the opening match of the main card, of course, of Emergence. Leon Slater makes his first championship defense, taking on Cedric Alexander, of course. Now, well, I don't know if this is first, but yeah. Well, second, actually. As you probably know, this is one of those moments where now you ask yourselves, why is this match happening? Well, Cedric Alexander feels Leon Slater is still young. He's not even in his prime. Now, you got to remember, there's always the type of record we see in pro wrestling. The youngest wrestler who held this title prior before Leon Slater was the Amazing Red. He was the youngest wrestler that held this title. And Leon Slater felt like, I should be the one to be the youngest to held this title. And that's exactly what he did when he defeated Moose at Slammiversary. And now he has to defend it against a wrestler who's been well recognized in the wrestling world. Now, of course, there were moments we saw in this entire match, Leon Slater's back was going out on him, but he was able to hold on as much as possible. But what's surprisingly is that he applied the Styles Clash, a famous move we all know from the phenomenal one, AJ Styles. And once he applied it, he did the Swanton 450, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was over. So just like that, and things ended in that fashion. So he retained the championship. Now, our next match, we have Mustafa Ali versus Matt Cardona. Now, as you all know, recently Matt Cardona, when he teamed up with the System, apparently the Order of 4 has been causing nothing but problems. They want to prove that they are now the current dominant faction in TNA. So the System felt threatened, and then not to mention Matt Cardona was alone dealing with them, and now he has to deal with Mustafa Ali. Now, of course, wherever he goes, the order of idiots, as I like to call them, decided to interfere in the match. But luckily, somehow, Matt Cardona was able to surprise everyone by defeating Mustafa Ali. But however, the celebration was cut short with a beatdown, of course, by the Great Morons, and not to mention Agent Idiot, of course. They decided to get involved. Luckily, the System showed up, Myers and, of course, Edwards. However, of course, the System has to deal with none other than First Class, AJ Francis, and Rich Swann. So you probably can guess we jumped into the match immediately into that. Now, things would have gone normally and planned, but however, at some point, once again, Mustafa Ali's secret dickheads decided to get involved, not to mention the other members of Order of Morons decided to interfere too. But because of that, it kind of draw away the real problem. Eddie Edwards got himself tangled up by AJ Dork himself, of course, and decided to do the down payment, and just like that, 1, 2, 3 is over. Now, you know perfectly well, I don't think the system is going to let this slide. They will get revenge on First Class and, of course, the Order of 4 and their Secret Service. So, that could happen. Now, Joe Hendry made his way into the ring as part of the commentary booth for this particular match. And that match is, of course, Mike Santana versus Sami Callihan, which could be Sami Callihan's final match. And this match was none other than a Baltimore street fight. So that means a lot of things could go exactly brutal and bloody murder, that sort of thing. But one thing you probably saw is the staple gun, which is no joke. I don't think anybody expected that one way or the other. But it took only, of course, a spin the block by Mike Santana to put down Sami Callihan, and just like that, 1, 2, 3. However, I think many of you may saw that Callihan might have kicked out at 3. Maybe it was already too late when the final thing came down, and just like that, it was over. And of course, we did see Sami take off his boots and walked off stage. We did see, of course, Sami Callihan getting a standing ovation from everybody in the back. And if Eric Young decided to act like, you don't need to do this, like he thinks he's doing a favor for Sami. And then, of course, Joe Hendry step up against him. So basically, that's how it's gonna be. Now, before our next match, it was for the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team belts. Masha Savage, along with Jazz, and of course the president of TNA, announced a very interesting announcement, a very good one. It is announced that Li Yingling is now signed a contract with TNA, so it's a great moment. However, Li Yingling and her tag partner Zaya Brookside have to prepare themselves for the upcoming 4-way title match, the TNA Knockouts World Title. Of course, interesting enough, the Inspiration made their way along with Mara Sade. Of course, we had the Fatal Influence, Jasmine Nix, and Fallon Henley, along with Daisy Jane. And then, of course, at the Elegance brand, Em and Heather, along with Ash by Elegance, and of course that little Chihuahua in tow as well. Now, of course, you would think this match is going to be chaotic. Well, they got a bit more chaotic when the seconds showed up. I'm talking about Masha, Mara, Ash, Fallon, Daisy Jane. So everybody got ejected and then wiped out. But, however, M decided to use the championship on McKay while the ref had her back turn and whacked her just like that. And 1, 2, 3, it was over. But of course, Mara said in an exclusive backstage moment, she told the Inspiration that they should be getting a little bit of measure of revenge for what they did. So that could happen sooner or later. Now, our next match is for the TNA International Championship. Jake Something versus Steve Macklin. Now, of course, Jake Something has targeted this belt for quite some time. He could not win this belt in that 3-way in Slammiversary, and now he gets another opportunity. But this is going to be one of those matches where all hell is going to break loose, no matter what. But, however, Steve Macklin, being a bulletproof that he is, was able to apply the KIA, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was over. And then, of course, we did see a bit of a Kabosh Mets comment, and then Frank Kazarian, being the loudest mouth person on the planet, tried to get involved. Well, Macklin's like, come on, let's deal with this in the ring. But Kazarian just walked off the other place like he actually, oh, hell no. So you probably can guess how that turned out. Now, our next match, we have, of course, the TNA World Tag Team belts. The Rascals, Myron Reed, and Zachary Wentz taking on the Hardys, which, of course, we all know this was going to be a very interesting tag team match. Now, originally, we were supposed to have the Meneth brothers, but due to the circumstances surrounding Nick Meneth touching Santino Marella, it led to this. And that kind of went off. I mean, no problems. The match was pretty good. Like, there was like some basic similarities between the Hardys and the Rascals, but it was Jeff Hardy who picked up the win onto Myron Reed with the Swanton Bomb, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was over. Now, once again, the first class penthouse decided to take stage, and then later, of course, we have Poe, the Baltimore Ravens mascot, made their presence known, and then, of course, the system showed up, and then Alicia Edwards trying to get in AJ Francis' face, but AJ's like, hell no, bitch, ain't gonna happen. But he got a little slap in the face, so he had that coming. So you probably can guess how that was gonna turn out. So first class just walked off. Now for our main event is the TNA World Championship. Moose makes another attempt to bring back this belt against Trick Williams. Now, of course, we all know this is a crucial match where, of course, the belt has to come back to where it rightfully belongs. Now, Trick Williams, of course, did everything humanly possible to take down Moose, and Moose also. But now keep in mind, Moose was injured, attacked this past Thursday, in hopes that probably by Trick that he was going to walk away, making sure he remains champion. But however, it was, of course, one trick shot where he thought he had the winning match, but it didn't. And then he tried again, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, Trick Williams retained the championship. And just like that, the TNA World Title is in the hands of an outsider. And however, we hope that the TNA Knockouts World Title will come back next week during, of course, the Heat Wave. So we'll see how that will progress from there. So stay tuned for that. But as of right now, we'll end things here with TNA Emergence. Let's move on with AAA Triplemania. It's been a while since, of course, I reviewed AAA, and we're doing Triplemania, which is, of course, their version of Wrestlemania, in case anybody asks. And this took place, of course, recently this past Saturday on August 16th in Ciudad de Mexico. Our opening match was called the Copa Bardal Sebinerico, which is like a championship trophy. And basically, there were a lot of things that took place on this particular match. So, we had like tons of wrestlers coming not only from AAA but also from WWE. We have, of course, Cruz del Toro, Joaquin Wild, Omos. We have La Parca. We have Laredo Kid, Octagon Jr. Let me see if I can pull up exactly how the elimination happened for all of you. Here it is. Okay. Aerostar eliminates Laredo Kid. Mecha Wolf eliminates Joaquin Wild. Otis eliminates Aerostar. Otis and Pimpinela Escarlata eliminates Taurus. Mecha Wolf and Otis eliminate Pimpinela Escarlata. Microman and Otis eliminate Serpenerico. Otis eliminates Abismo Negro. Almost eliminates Abismo Negro Jr. Almost eliminates the Cruz del Toro. Microman eliminates Otis. Otis eliminates Microman. La Parca eliminates Mecha Wolf. And then, of course, almost eliminates both Octagon Jr. and La Parca. So basically, he wins the tournament. But yeah, it was interesting that someone like that participate in that. Now, our next match is a very interesting one. It's the AAA Latin America Championship. Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. faces the champion, El Mesias. Now, if you guys are knows the history of this, El Mesias is the one who always bragged about when this match was made, that it would take a great pleasure of him to beat up Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. the same way he did to his father, Dr. Wagner Jr. As you know, they met years ago, and that kind of sets it up, the whole thing. But much of the entire match, there was interference coming from Dorian Roldan, who is the president of the company, and of course a loyalist of El Mesias. But of course, at some point, Dr. Wagner Jr. just had enough of Dorian getting involved, and then he gave him a whack to the face so he never forgets. However, Mesias thought he had this one match because of the outside interference, but it did not work until Hijo de Dr. Wagner applied the Wagner driver, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, brand new AAA Latin American champion. So basically, that goes right there in his in the whole thing. Now, our next match, we had a 6-person tag match, which is a mixture of people. We have Lola Vice teaming up with Nino Hamburguesa and Mr. Iguana. They take on the Judgment Day, Raquel Rodriguez, JD McDonough, and Finn Balor. Now, of course, if you guys saw a very interesting moment, we have Deminito, which of course is like a little puppet of the demon, being there. And it was interesting. They were facing off against you know, the iguana that Mr. Iguana has by his side. And then a very interesting moment, Nino Burguesa brought in some hamburgers, and he gave one to Finn Balor. And then, of course, he looked at Demetrius like saying, what should I do? Yeah, go ahead, taste it. I thought it was a great moment. But, however, Roxanne Perez decides to get involved in the match until La Hedra showed up. Well, accidentally, she tried to get Roxanne, but she got Lola Vice instead by accident, chasing Roxanne Perez. But this allowed for, of course, Raquel to apply the Tejana bomb onto Lola, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, Judgment Day won the match. Now, our next match is a street fight for the AAA World Tag Team belts. Now, Psycho Clown has made an attempt for these belts before with Mr. Iguana, but it didn't do any favor for him because it didn't go well. So he called in another clown to help him out, and that clown was Vegano. So you probably can guess how this was going to go. I mean, there was a lot of plunder, a lot of toys being used, like tables, chairs, and all that, including a barbed wire. But it was, of course, Psycho Clown who took out Humberto by wrapping up him on a barbed wire and then later applying the Spanish Fly. And just like that, 1, 2, 3, Vegano and Psycho Clown, brand new AAA World Tag Team Champions. Now, our next title match is the AAA Reina de Reinas Championship, which is, of course, the Women's Championship. We have Fabi Apache versus Natalia versus Flamer. Now, of course, when it comes to three-ways, we all know how things will turn up in this one. Anything could happen. Technically, Flamer doesn't need to be pinned. So that kind of sets it up right there. I mean, Natalia could pin Fabi, or Fabi pin Natalia, and that could end it up. But no, it didn't do any well. It was, of course, Flamer who picked up the win and retained the championship. And then later, during the post-match, all hell broke loose between Fabi Apache and Natalia. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see those two face each other at some point, but that could happen. Now, our main event is the AAA Mega Championship. We have El Grande Americano versus Dragon Lee versus Dominic Mysterio versus Hijo de Vikingo. Now, some of you may question me if you leave a comment about J-Rod. We saw that people were booing him. Do you have any idea why? Well, yes. This is a similar matter that we saw in New Japan, where Vikingo pinned Alberto Del Rio for the championship, and some people were not happy with that result. It's the same thing what we saw with Naito when he pinned Hiroshi Tanahashi, and that people were booing him for that. So I think some of you may ask me, would he turn heel? I don't know. That's something I don't know. But however, of course, we all know that certain people will love nothing more than take away this belt off of Dragon Lee. Of course, Judgment Day, JD McDonough and Finn Balor showed up to give him a helping hand, but LWO showed up to give them help. And then, of course, Gran Americano's henchmen showed up too, in order to do so, to pick up the win. However, one thing that led to another. Dom thought he had everything under control. He used a loaded mask to knock out his opponent. He had Hijo de Vikingo right where he wanted him when he applied Frog Splash, but all of a sudden the ref was pulled. And it was like, what the hell, man? And all of a sudden, of course, it was AJ Styles who cost him that. And I don't think he expected it. And then Hijo de Vikingo applied 630, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, Hijo de Vikingo retained the championship. Now, of course, if you saw the boost, now you know, like, people want him gone, as don't want him champion anymore. But we'll see how things roll up. But we do know that, of course, Hijo de Vikingo will defend his championship again against Dominic at Worlds Collide. So we'll see how that will turn out. But as of right now, we're done with AAA. Let's move on with our last and final review, AEW Collision. AEW Collision. So we opened up, of course, with Toni Storm doing her little promo. As you all know, she'll be facing Athena, defending the AEW World Women's Championship. However, of course, Athena decided to beat the crap out of her along with Billy Starks to prove her point that she's a fraud, that no matter what, that she's going to destroy her and take the title from her and become forever AEW Women's World Champion. However, out of nowhere, Mina Shirakawa showed up. And just like that, Toni Storm took out Billy Starks and it became a 2-on-1 scenario until, of course, Athena ran through the hills, jumped into the arms of security, and of course, they were running. But of course, Toni Storm was happy to see Mina Shirakawa back because Athena thought in her righteous mind that Toni Storm had no one to back her up. Well, she did this time, and there's nothing she can do about it. Unless, of course, they take her out before before Forbidden Door. So we'll see how that goes from there. Now, our first official match, we have the Death Riders, Wheeler Yuta and Jon Moxley taking on JetSpeed, Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey. Now remember, Moxley defeated these two men individually thanks to interference with Marina Shafir involved. And of course, Marina Shafir got involved no matter what. But what's funny is, of course, she took herself accidentally from the staircase and just stepped away. Now, of course, you all know, then of course we did see a bit of a misfired by Yuta to Jon Moxley. Now, of course, many of us thought, okay, there was cracks happening with Death Riders, but no. Wheeler Yuta was able to capitalize it by putting the bridge onto Kevin Knight, winning the match. And just like that, it was over. Now, the Outrunners did some sort of, vignette, which is interesting, where they're like acting like soldiers and camouflage and all that. I don't know what that's about, but can't wait to see them again. Now, we have Ricochet versus Austin making his official AEW debut. Many of you may not know this. He was, at fact, at AEW, and then, of course, he was signed, which was very interesting to hear. There were speculations about the possibilities that Ace Austin could join the Bang Bang Gang because of his connections with Jay White. If you all remember, Jay White had the greatest idea to have, of course, the ABC part of the Bullet Club thing when they got Chris Bay. So I'm not sure if that's the case. But however, Ace Austin has to deal with none other just with Ricochet, but the Gates of Agony, who decides to interfere. And as always, the interference is the problem by Ricochet. And then, of course, Ricochet applied the Spirit Gun, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was over. Now, the Hurt Syndicate were interviewed by Renee Paquette, talked about, of course, who they think would win, of course, this coming Wednesday in Glasgow for to challenge them at Forbidden Door. But, of course, I don't think it matters into their case because what's the point? But, of course, there's the elephant in the room with the MJF drama, so they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So they decide, like, not our problem, that sort of thing, Now, our next match, we had Lee Johnson and Blake Christian taking on Paragon. Of course, Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly. Now, we've seen these two guys are a really amazing tag team, which we've seen countless times. Of course, we all know what's going on. Kyle O'Reilly rejoining the conglomeration. He tried to get Roderick Strong to get involved, but they were able to, of course, get this match over with when they applied the high-low on Blake Christian, and just like that, it was over. And then the conglomeration showed up, of course, to congratulate them. And then Roderick's like, I'm not having this. Now, in the backstage, FTR attacked Bandito and removed his mask. And then, of course, Brody King went on a 2-on-1 excursion on both FTR. However, that little weasel, Stokely Hathaway, used powder, the same one he used on Copeland, in order to blindside it and take him out with the Shatter Machine. Now, there was a backstage promo in the back with Skyfly talking about Don Callis. As you know, Don Callis has been looking for more recruitments, and this was not going to happen. But of course, Christopher Daniels says, let's make this happen next week. Doesn't matter if it's singles, tag match, however. And then, of course, I had to say Layla goes out saying that she's going to F them up. And then, of course, the swear jar. And then later, saying, here's $10 because I say it's BS. And then they all went to train. So Tony Schiavone says, well, if she keeps this up, there basically going to be a lot of money in the swear jar. Now, our next match is a bit of one of those $1,000 type matches. We have Julia Hart versus Penelope Ford versus Anna Jay versus Chris Statlander. Now, of course, a lot of things could happen in this match. I wasn't too sure how this was going to be because it was a four-way. Four-ways are very complicated because either or someone's going to pick up the win without expecting it. But in the end, it was Chris Statlander that walked away with the win on Julia Hart with a submission, and just like that, it was over. But however, a beatdown came around when the members of the Triangle of Madness showed up. Tekla and Sky Blue attacked, and so did Penelope Ford. And Queen Aminata and Ty Mello tried to intervene, but it was just too much until Field of Wrath just showed up out of nowhere. So all hell broke loose. So I don't know what everybody's going to think. Like, what the hell, And then we did see Kyle Fletcher in the back, of course, giving his thoughts about, of course, the person they sent. We're talking about Hiromu Takahashi, who is, in fact, going to be facing Kyle Fletcher in the in Forbidden Door. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, Chris Statlander was interviewed by Renee Paquette talking about her about what happened, and then Harley Cameron, all happy for her until the Death Riders showed up, and then, they didn't like what Harley Cameron was doing, and then things were like, sorry about that. And then, of course, Wheeler Yuta, being the little snake that he is, he wants Chris Statlander to join the Death Riders, but we all know Chris doesn't want nothing to do with her, and I don't think Marina wants her to join. And I think that's the thing that I noticed. I feel like watching this whole thing with Yuta and Chris, it was more like, hey, I want you to join. Marina's like, oh, hell no. So that's the thing I'm going to see. Now, our next match, we have Juice Robinson versus Brian Keith. Now, as you know, Brian Keith and Big Bill has been nothing but a big problem to the Bang Bang Gang out of nowhere. But one thing that was interested of the whole thing is how this was going to go. Big Bill and Austin Gunn, well, let's just say they were causing a bit of a problem outside, but it did not cause the interference in the inside. But luckily, Juice Robinson walked away with the win when he applied the Juice's Loose, and just like that, 1, 2, 3 was over. However, Juice Robinson knew from the very beginning that sooner or later they were going to get clobbered, so they decided to hightail it out, knowing that this is not over between both sides of the teams. Now, Renee Paquette done her final interview with Anthony Bowens, talking about, of course, about Max Caster, but Anthony had enough of hearing about him. He's telling him he's a loser. He hasn't won a single match. So we may see those two team face off again. Now, we do have our technical spectacular match. Now, whoever walks out of this match will face Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP World Heavyweight title. We have Daniel Garcia, Nigel McGuinness, Heichi Seto, and Lee Moriarty. Now, of course, all technical aspects. Now, some of you may question, why are they putting technical wrestling in this one? You got to remember, Zack Sabre Jr. is one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. If you guys know one of his nicknames, they call him the Technical Wizard. He can put you in a submission that you wouldn't even see it coming. He can analyze you at a moment's notice. So that's how he operates. So this is one of those matches where it could fit in. But I think many of you may ask who was going to walk out with the win. I mean, it could have been anybody. But in the end, it was Nigel McGuinness who applied a very strong submission on Lee Moriarty. And just like that, Nigel McGuinness won. But during the post-match comments, he did ask Daniel Garcia to be his corner man during the match at Forbidden Door. So that's going to be interesting to see. So I can't wait to see how that goes. But as of right now, we are officially done with our reviews. Let's move on to our last and final thing, news updates. Okay, so welcome to our news updates. So let's begin with upcoming events, as you all know. Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling will have their Sacred Ground event on September 5th. They just announced the Canadian French the Frankenstein French Canadian PCO will be involving in this match, which was obvious. And then, of course, we have GCW Homecoming in LA on the 20th of September. They announced Jordan Oliver will take on Frankie Kazarian. Now, as you all know, we already finished with the G1 Climax with New Japan. Then, of course, we have Stardom's with their 5-star Grand Prix. They're almost wrapping up. Then we have, of course, the Dream Star. Now Pro Wrestling NOAH will have their annual Robin tournament beginning on September 3rd, and it will go all the way to the end of the month. However, they did announce who will be participating for this year's N1 Victory. This is Group A. We have Kenta, Keito Kiyomiya, Manabu Soya, Oka Sasaki, Kazuki Fujita, Tetsuya Endo, Masakita Miya, and Daga. Now in Group B, we have Galeno del Mal, Naomichi Marufuji, Keno, Daiki Inaba, Jack Morrison, Harutoki, Ricky Knight Jr., of course, the nephew of Saraya, aka Paige, and then, of course, we have Ozawa-san. Now, if you guys notice something interesting, there are no names mentioned, of course, of any NXT or WWE talent involved, which is unusual. We have Tavion Heights and Josh Briggs involved last year, but now we don't see any of that one. And of course, Yoshiko Inamura is not even mentioned. So that's pretty much what's happening in the N1 Victory. Now, some of you may ask, what happens if you win it? You get a shot of the GHC Heavyweight title, which I think Kenta is the current title holder. And then finally, of course, Italian promotion SAJ Wrestling will have their final Bout 4 event in November on the 29th, and they just announced the cutest in the world, Maki Ito, will be participating. Now, a very interesting thing has happened. If you guys saw AAA, you notice there was a wrestler calling himself Taurus. If you guys don't know about this, Beast Mortos, his prior name before when he joined AEW full-time, he was known as Taurus. So basically that name is a property of course, of AAA. However, apparently, Beast Mortos said that he was going to file a lawsuit against him because apparently the current Taurus guy who was using a mask is similar to his. Now, there are people who are saying that there's no way he could win this one. Some of you may ask, what does Mercedes Monet think about this? Well, I don't know. She has reacted to it, but I don't know exactly what's her reaction. But there are some similarities, if I didn't notice. But the only difference is this one has a bull's horn. Nothing like we saw with Beast Mortos, but yeah, just like that. So we'll see. Fightful Select reports that Tony Khan is not a big fan of Evil. So yeah, that's the reason we haven't seen him in AEW recently. So that's very interesting. So he said he's not a big fan of him whatsoever. So it would make absolute sense. I don't know what's the deal with that, but there are those that think that Tony Khan has poor taste on that. I don't know what's the real reason. Even Kevin Kelly thinks that, that shows you that he has poor taste. But I don't know what's the main reason, but that's what's been going on. Now, many of you know I reviewed, of course, the Emergence event by TNA. Well, AJ just reacted to Leon Slater applying the Styles Clash. Well, now he dubbed it as the Slater's Clash. So it's like, you can just name it. You don't need to call it the Styles Clash anymore. So, I mean, people call it Styles Clash who uses it, but Slater, he is naming it. Now, an interesting thing that was revealed with WWE and AAA. This was reported by the Wrestling Observer. Let me pull it up for you. Apparently, they're saying WWE signed Microman, La Hiedra, La Parca, Fabia Paci, Nino Hamburguesa, Messias, and Lady Flamer to contracts. Now, this was reported by Wrestling Observer about this. However, did notice something interesting on the comment section. Some people say WWE has failed Stephanie Vakir. Now, some of you may question, come on, J-Ro, why would they fail Stephanie Vakir? If you guys remember, I mentioned this 2 years ago. Stephanie Vakir was involved in a domestic violence by her ex-boyfriend named Cuartero, who is part of a band of brothers in AAA for a long time, and Cuartero ended up 2 years in prison. However, his brother and cousin are very mad at Stephanie Vickier because, she reported him and he ended up in prison. And not only that, it was revealed that La Hiedra is dating Cuartero's brother. So as you probably can guess, that La Hiedra would do nothing more than humiliate her, make her pay for putting, of course, Cuartero behind prison. Some people are still angry that WWE had done nothing. Now, the last time Stephanie went to Mexico, her real life boyfriend Miles Bourne was there, and I just hope that he's there with her all the time to keep La Hiedra at bay. Because if something happens, if La Hiedra hurts Stephanie McHugh, that's going to be on WWE's fault because they did not realize she has a problem with Stephanie for putting her brother-in-law behind bars. But that's how life is. If WWE cannot acknowledge what just transpired 2 years ago, then that's on them. So we'll see what happens. But I have to say, the names that they called out, Microman, he's an awesome wrestler. La Parca, well, I like the old La Parca that we remember, not the original, but the second one. Fabia Pache, well, I'm a big fan of her. Nina Bergesa, Messias. I even met Messias one time a few years ago. So yeah, that's pretty much it what we have for our news updates. Let's call it a day. Well, I hope everybody enjoys this episode. Coming up, as you know, we are going to catch up with both New Japan and Stardom. As you know, New Japan has finally wrapped up the G1 Climax. Now, I know exactly what happened, but I did not see the full extent due to the fact of what's been happening this past weekend with me. So I'm going to do what I can and put both Stardom and New Japan in the same category. So bear with me, boys and girls, on that. So we'll go from there. And as soon as that is over, if I catch up with everything, I'll catch up with the rest of the Yoshi Wrestling. And I'm already backed up with Tokyo Super Wrestling all the way from June. So it's going to be fun to try to catch up with them. So we'll go from there. But so right now, I will see you guys in the next DWZ time, same DWZ channel. I must bid all of you adieu. So, goodbye. And have a nice day. Bang.